Here we go. Welcome back to Brown and Browner. I know we've been on a little bit of a hiatus. We'll call it our summer break for a little bit, but we are back in full gear with sports news, public news, everything in between.
That is right. Welcome. We are back, and we're a little bit tanner, so we're a little browner than we were
Right.
before. But we were ready to talk about, we talk a lot about sports, but I think, the tenor across the nation right now and the way people feel is not just sports oriented, which is a great story, makes people come together, and I love sports for that because it doesn't have a race. It has an emotion and a feeling that we all feel, regardless of what we look like or come from. But what's really concerning to everybody, especially if you have kids, is this shooting and the continual stories that are coming out relating to shootings across this nation at campuses where children are, whether it's grammar school, high school, or even college level. We're seeing it across the board. And it's a serious concern. And it has me very worried about where we are as a nation and what we plan on doing to stop these types of activities.
Yep.
And events.
Like I said, it's been a month since we've been on, and you always hope for positive change in the time that you're not seen or heard. But at the same time, here we are again. School's back in session, and we're seeing the same things happen year after year after year.
1 week, schools have been in session, and we already have a mass shooting where people were killed.
Yep.
That is sad. And we have to do something as a society, as a nation, to come up with a way to minimize these types of occurrences. And it's so sad.
And as my colleague and I were talking about before we jumped on, is regardless of what side of the alley you're on, all you're going to hear today, and this was not 24 hours after it's happened, you're going to get all these politicians and all these other bigwigs up, and they're going to talk their smoke and blame each other, why it's happening, all this stuff. You have no action on either side of the aisle. Zero. I call for any person of power at this point to take action one way or the other. Because guess what? The way that the democracy works is you take action. If you don't like it, you revote somebody into office. It's as simple as that. You have an opportunity every 4 years or every cyclical cycle to vote for someone else to come into office and change the way things are. So if somebody wants to take action right now, whether it's something as drastic as banning guns or something as drastic to say, hey, we're going to put in surveillance all over the country to try to prevent these things from happening. Hey, that's what, at least somebody's taking actionable stuff from it. Now, whether it works or not, we'll see what happens. Obviously, last night I was skimming through the news late night after watching sports, mind you, and some U.S. Open action, which we'll get to here in a second.
We'll get to that. Yep.
There was a notable figure, I think, on Fox News who had come on and talked about how he's building out a system incorporating AI and surveillance that starts monitoring basically bad social media, essentially. So anything that's showing threats to the society, anything of that nature, and it preemptively gets folks like the FBI, local news agents, local enforcement agencies, and everybody else involved, and at least known to what's going to happen. Relative to yesterday, from what we understand from the news so far, the gentleman who committed this heinous act put out a timed video that was set to launch while he was in action of doing the deed that he did on YouTube. Was 10 minutes enough to possibly stop this action? Probably not. But, had he posted something else like a manifesto or something, more publicly and stuff like that, could something like a surveillance system work? Yeah, possibly. But then do we get into this whole thing where we're invading people's privacy and we turn into a state like we always criticize across all over the globe? Where governments are heavily involved in their people's actions and things like that. Notably, things like China and stuff where you have surveillance or other places. Do we become that country, or do we still remain an independent thought where we have respect for people and respect for things and try to live as a single society? But unfortunately, we have bad actors. We know that, and it's not stopping. So what do you do to stop it?
And that's what needs to be discussed. And again, you mentioned something that I think becomes an issue, and I think we'll be able to transition into some things that happen in other, in sports actually yesterday. But I feel like politicians make this political. This isn't a political issue. This is a people issue. We are all people. I don't care what side of the fence you're on from a party standpoint. This shouldn't be about that. This should be about how do we make it safer for the people who live in the United States.
At
Not
what
the
point,
Republicans, not the Democrats.
at what point does it become actionable? Does it, I mean, I don't want to cause a threat, but does a political person's child need to be endangered? Like for this
Before
to
they
be,
take
you
it
know,
seriously, yeah,
yeah,
before they start seeing it in the right perspective.
exactly. I mean, like I said, all you're going to hear today, unfortunately, on the news and everyone else, everybody's going to get on their podium and talk about what's bad, what's good, and everything else, and blame each other for why it happened and all that stuff. At the end of the day, there is no action, one way or the other, and that's the sad truth of it. We're going to talk about this for 30 days. We're going to talk about it going through courts and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I don't want to care to hear that. I want to hear about how you're going to stop this from happening at the next school. Simple as that.
Right. Right. And again, that shouldn't be political. That should be about people. We need to make the world safe for people, not certain people, not having a perspective that involves the political lens, but the human lens.
Right.
And, you know, I think at the end of the day, maybe something, especially what you've just mentioned, if someone has posted something like that and things are going to happen, you know, a week from now or whatever, that gives us an opportunity to, one, stop that particular threat. Two, maybe you can get that person help, or at least be more serious and focused on why is he or she posting these things, and what can we do to help them out of these, being in this, you know, perspective or mind, a thought of mine to think that this is an okay act to do. We got to, I don't know how this is and how all of a sudden people feel like they're God and they can just take another life without, you know, thinking about the consequences of that, not just being arrested or being, but, you know, that having that, but more of what does it do for those people? And I tell you what, my children weren't at that school, but I still feel it because I understand how it is to be a parent. And God, that's the worst feeling in the world, to feel like your kids are in danger, especially if for those parents. And my condolences to all of those parents of the kids at that school, whether they, you know, suffered some kind of, you know, trauma due to that event, or just, you know, being there. I feel for all of you, and my condolences to the kids, the parents of those kids who actually were shot and killed. That's just a horrible thing. And too many horrible things are happening in our nation and in the world. And there needs to be a way to stop it. One of the things I will pose before maybe we go to the next subject is this. We talk about gun control, and people, I get both sides of the argument, you know, the right to bear arms and this and that. Just remember, the Constitution was written for that time. It wasn't written for this time. People who say guns don't kill people, people do. People with guns kill people more easily than people without guns.
Yes.
And I understand you're right, but at the same time, is your right going to supersede what is important for our society to be able to continue to exist and not go through these events? That's the question I pose to people in general. I understand the right to bear arms, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, guns kill people. People with guns kill people. People with a knife, if he had a knife, if he had something else, wouldn't be able to do the things that he did and may not even try. So
think about the number of times you hear about such crimes of shooting in countries where they have measures to ban guns and restrict guns, essentially. Europe, notably.
That's what I was getting at. Europe. Yep. They don't have guns. Do you hear these kind of events happening as frequently as it does in America? No, you don't.
Nope.
That says something. If the cops can roll around without guns and still be able to enforce the law, why do we feel like we need 1,000 guns to be able to protect ourselves and do these things? I just feel like something's off kilter here, and there's a way for us to resolve it. But I think people feel like my right supersedes the right of all people, and that's a problem.
And as much as we're talking about what I think should be the focus of the discussion, unfortunately, if you heard or seen and read all the circumstances behind yesterday's tragic shooting, they're going to make it highly political, and I'll tell you why. And I hate to trivialize the situation. You're talking about an individual that apparently had a manifesto out there about some grief about, you know, society, and I think abortion rights and several other things. Supposedly, the guy also like changed his name, may have been transgender, that kind of thing. The political climate of attacking a Catholic school. I mean, there's just so many different angles here that, you know, politicians are going to sit there and highlight all day today when they have nothing to do with the fact that A, this individual had a beef with whatever it was in society, doesn't matter what, and something could have been done to help him somewhere along the way.
I think potentially that's right. You know what? We've all gone through issues in our life. Hey, I'm Black. I'm going to tell you that has been something to deal with, and many people probably couldn't. I have never once thought about going out on a rampage because of the things that have happened to me that were, not justified, and in some cases treated me less than human. But I still did not get to the point where I felt like I should lash out. And just bad is lashing out in that way, but lashing out against people who had nothing to do with the way I feel. There are a lot of people sitting on this, who see this podcast, maybe sitting at home right now, feeling alone, feeling depressed, all of these things. And I understand, because I've been depressed and continue to be depressed, but that should not lead to the actions that we continue to see when people feel like their voice isn't being heard, or people don't understand their condition, or I'm tired of my own life. Yeah, if I'm tired about my own life, I should only then, and I don't even feel like you have this right to do it to yourself, but I should not involve my pain or involve others in my pain. They should not suffer because I'm suffering. I should find a way to be able to come up with a constructive, civilized way to express my thoughts, not this.
There's people there will listen. There's people that are there to help you, and help can be sought. Help can be provided. So there's always an outlet without having to harm others undue. I mean, sad truth of it is, you had an 8 and a 10-year-old killed yesterday.
Yes.
What did they do? What did they
didn't
do wrong?
Anything.
Exactly.
Nothing. We didn't even give them an opportunity to live and experience life. It was taken away from them by someone they didn't even know and didn't impact or influence in any way.
Yep.
That's sad. I mean, we could talk about this for the length of this show. Again, I think our condolences and support go out to those parents of the kids at that school, especially those that were harmed by this individual. And we hope that we can find a way to eliminate these types of events from occurring in the future.
Nope. And I'll transition on a similar note where, we see the pain and the hurt in the world, and sometimes it crosses over to sport, which it did yesterday to some degree. We don't know the full circumstances behind it, but obviously the way it was handled on both sides, it's up for debate. Now,
can I stop you before you continue?
Yeah.
Again, we're not trying to trivialize what had happened and what we just discussed. We're just moving on to a different subject, something entirely different. It isn't necessarily the equal to the events that happened, but we also want to point out things that lead to those types of events. Yep. This particular occurrence in tennis is something that is another one of those subjects across our nation, across society, that we struggle to deal with, and sometimes deal with in the wrong manner. And
absolutely,
I'll let you go ahead and continue.
Nope, absolutely, dead on point. And if you've had the privilege of watching the U.S. Open, it's always a great event every year. It's kind of a coming together of the entire tennis society globally, which is kind of cool because it's New York City. You've got this big melting pot of people. It's an exciting vibe. It's everything else. Yesterday, you got a matchup between Taylor Towson, #1 doubles player in the world right now, Jelena Ostapenko, a notable player on the women's side. Match goes on. Taylor Towson wins. At the end of the match, words are exchanged, thoughts are exchanged. During the match itself, there was a net ball that came over, and some people argue that the tradition in tennis and part of the unwritten rule is
and
to
courtesy,
just say sorry and something like that. If you get a let court win, or if you get a net court ball that trips over and you get the point or whatever, you kind of wave it off and say, hey, sorry about that. Honestly, there's a lot of unwritten rules in a lot of sports, right? And I'm sorry, times change, things of that nature. Did Taylor Towson need to say, hey, I'm sorry? Maybe, maybe not. And a lot of people can put that up for debate. I personally think you move on. It's a competitive environment. You're not required to be, cordial for every single thing in the world, for every single reason in the world. You play on, you're in a competitive environment, you move on. I think a mountain was made out of a molehill, essentially, by her opponent, Jelena Ostapenko, who took offense to such an action that where Taylor didn't wave off anything or say apology, because it's not her fault. The ball is being played. I'm sorry, but when in football, when you have a tipped ball and somebody catches it, you say, hey, my bad.
I'm sorry. Sorry I interrupted you. I know that wasn't the intention of your pass, but
yeah. I'm sorry, you more or less fast talk, you know? So to that point, this situation got embroiled to the point where at the end of the match, after Taylor Towson had won, they go up for the shaking hands. Elena Ostapenko makes it a point to say, hey, it's a classless act, basically. She said two phrases apparently where she said, hey, you have no education and you have no common sense, essentially, in the nicest way.
Or class, I think is what
Class,
you said.
I
You
believe
have
is
no
the word.
class.
Yeah, sorry,
You
class.
repeated the phrase, you have no education. And
Yes.
just to jump in, I'm a black person, okay?
Yeah.
You can
That's
see
a
that.
very derogatory condiment. Yes.
All right. Not hard to miss, right? I've gone through a lot in my life. I know
Yeah.
what racism looks like. I know what hate looks like. And I've been the victim of actions of people who have expressed their hate in a way that wasn't appropriate. But I took it on the chin. Well, sometimes they took it on the chin, but once they did those acts. But one thing I just want to point out, those actions during that tennis match, and Pramit, you said it perfectly. There's a courtesy that's an understood courtesy. It's not mandatory. It's just a courtesy we do now within the sport of tennis. You know, tennis, golf, you know, these are those elitist kind of sports. Let's just be real about that. And there is a certain history behind that, you know, the whole thing, Wimbledon, you must wear white, all of these things. What isn't acceptable is, since that's a choice, yes, the person made that choice. And also, you know, in the heat of battle, we're competitors, right?
Exactly.
I'm not trying to always be very cordial to my opponent. Playing a friend, playing my mom, I'm trying to beat you every time I play you. But as a black person, when I hear phrases like, you're not educated and you lack class,
that is a trigger.
It can be taken as racism. So I understand how people may have seen that, but let's clarify this point. Point number one. It's not mandatory for somebody to do that. When you lose, you have to also lose with class, just like you're supposed to win with class. If you have a beef relating to how things were done during that match, express that behind the walls. That's not something that needs to be out there, because now all of a sudden you got people calling this racism. And I do not think this was a racist act.
I want to supplement what you just said. So this is coming from a person, meaning Elena Ostapenko, who has notably, not even shaking hands after a match with players.
That's classless. Yes.
He pointed that out after the fact, and I've seen it. She is known on the tour as someone who is not very well received in the locker room.
Exactly.
Some of her actions and tones on a tennis court after the fact. She is a sore loser, in fact, in the nicest way possible. You know, maybe not.
Well, what you can't do is then act in that way that's classless and then try to pull that out on someone else. Yeah. And exactly. I get it that Townsend isn't a noted singles player. She is a #1 doubles player, but she's not a notable singles player from a ranking standpoint. She's rising. She's getting to, you know, be a better singles player. But I feel like you just said, Ostapenko did that. I did hear something before that growing up that Ostapenko, right? She idolized one of the Williams sisters. Yep. And played her and lost to her, but again, was idolizing a black player.
Yes, exactly.
What I want to make sure of, and again, as a black person, I get the whole idea, you know, racism and, I need to be respected, and you wouldn't say that to somebody who didn't look like me. I don't think that was the case here. What I think the case was, and I mentioned this, if you want to go on TikTok, you'll see something that I posted, and I apologize, Taylor, because I called you Thompson, not Townsend on that post. But the thing that we need to do is stop for a moment and take the emotion out of it and find out the real information before we label something racism. And, you know, Jesse Jackson back in the day did some great things and tried to point these things out. But then all of a sudden he started doing this across everything. And there was a notable incident where he tried to champion this was racism, and it wasn't racism at all. And he lost all of his following and clout, and the legacy that he built was torn down just that quick. And there was a reporter right after the match that came up and said and asked Taylor directly, like from a black perspective, being a black person, you said this, isn't this racism, this kind of thing. And I love how Taylor responded. She did not call this racism. She called this an act of a loser who in the moment used some emotions. And I want to take that further. I have a wife that's European. This is not her first language. Her first language, she might have expressed this differently or more directly in how she wanted to, and her intentions of the comment. But because of that, in Europe, they have different expressions like being educated in class and things like that don't mean the same things that it does in English. And her intent was to point out that she was not being, I guess, adhering to the unwritten rules of tennis and how when you hit the net to put the hand up. And the other thing is when you win a match, that you go and shake the person's hand immediately. Sometimes people celebrate. They look in the crowd, they go, they're so happy because they are, full of joy after an emotional match. And maybe they take a second or two. But I don't feel like it was so deliberate that she came up and she was late in doing that. But again, my point on this is, please understand how she was saying it. I'm Black. I'm not trying to give people who are racist a pass, but at the same time, I'm evaluating the information in a way that, to me, clearly identifies this as not being racism. She just didn't know how to express at that moment and wasn't tactful in how she expressed what she was saying to Taylor and trying to get her to be more respectful.
You hit the nail on the head. You said that Elena Ostapenko used to idolize one of the Williams sisters. Okay, so that context number one. Context number two, her translational value, being European and everything else, the education and class factor, she's referring to the history of tennis. I'm not trying to mansplain. I'm telling you what she's trying to tell you. She's trying to tell you that.
I hate that you had to say that. Hey, before, as you said, I hate that you had to say mansplain, because it's like everything is being so, everybody's so critical of things. Just because I'm a man and I'm explaining something doesn't mean that I'm trying to, degrade you or speak down to you. I'm just trying to inform you from my perspective what's going on.
Exactly.
Man, woman, or whatever. Yeah,
I'm glad you said that.
Please continue.
No, I'm glad you said that. That's actually a very valid point, because that's another thing. You could take it the other way. Absolutely. So no, to that point, she's trying to convey that historically in tennis, because of the way that the norms and the, informal unwritten rules of tennis, because of the way they're written, because they've been practiced, this just didn't conform to what she's used to. Okay, fine. Okay, we get that. Don't make it racist. Simple enough. Don't turn it into a media story outside of what it is. That's why I love Taylor Towson's response. That's why I liked how she kept it in bounds. I'm
100, Taylor. 100 on you.
The third point that she made in her backup of what it all happened, she's like, hey, we're out here trying to get a check. I'm moving on. I'm getting my next check. Yeah, because guess what? She got screwed out of a check because of the mixed doubles format. I'm gonna take it the next step further, where tennis fucked them over.
Actually, yeah, that's a good point.
Elena Ostapenko, also a doubles player, by the way. So these people are being screwed out of playing into a system. They were both mixed doubles players. They didn't get to play this year because of the new format and stuff. That's a six-figure check they're mixing out on. So you know what? It is a big deal for them to win this match. And there is a lot of pressure. And frankly, there is frustration when you lose, because you're missing out on potentially tens of thousands of dollars the next round. So you know what? I get it. And I'll back up both players on how they've handled it. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm glad that Ostapenko posted what she posted, because I hope that people were reading it and trying to understand it, as opposed to just, disregarding it because they have already made their decision on how that event should be judged. One thing we got to get away from as a nation, as a world, is not everything. And I'm Black, and I know I've had a lot of racism in my life. I've been the victim of a lot of, and still, as a grown, old-ass man, still experience that a little too much.
Yep.
But call a spade a spade. When racism is there, identify it. Let's figure out a way to properly identify it and help to educate and inform people so that they can see that and probably avoid having that become an issue in the future. But when it's not racism, let's not try to use an event or a certain particular act and call it this so we can bring more awareness to racism. You're not bringing awareness to racism if you're calling something racist when it's not. What you're doing is you're going to make people who are looking at these things, and maybe not on one side or the other, but when they get your information, they say, oh, well, see, this was wrong. It wasn't racism, but you're calling it racism. Then that'll take away from every other voice that you have, or an instance that you're trying to bring awareness and educate people about what racism is. Because I'll stop listening is the boy who cried wolf. If everything is racism, when some of it isn't, all of a sudden I'm not listening to you anymore. And then you're hurting the
Well,
cause.
I'm
Hurting
gonna
this is an opportunity that you can
Yeah.
help,
I'm gonna put
clear up and not have this become a hate thing across the world, and then people start in an uproar because of this type of event and you labeled it incorrectly.
Well, I'm going to put the media on blast on this one too, because they took it there. Honestly, they took
Yes,
it there.
it was that reporter. I really am upset with that reporter.
You had a U.S. Open this year, and I'm going to take this back even on the grander level. You had a U.S. Open this year that featured its first Filipino female player,
And she
was
won.
balling. Iala's balling. I
love that.
I'm hoping all sorts of good for it. You had Mboko, who represents Canada, who's Congolese.
Yes.
And she's putting it up and causing upsets everywhere. Where is the media highlight on the fact that tennis has progressed from what you just said, an elitist sport, to now where it's trickling down to the masses a little bit more day by day, and event by event, where we're starting to see women and men come from these other little countries and things, and they're developing programs and opportunities for people to grow and turn into something. Like, the media has not talked about it at all, and that's what I'm really pissed at. And now you're going to take it the other way and set us back another 50 years by making something that honestly isn't racist.
Exactly. And you know what's going to happen? Because the narrative could have been, this would be a perfect opportunity to help the narrative. Hey, you know what? That could be considered racist.
Yes.
But it's not racist for this reason. But what we need to do is to continue, and what the media should be doing right now is to continue to impress upon that point that, hey, listen to the words that were used. These are the type of words you shouldn't use because it could be misconstrued as racism if that wasn't your intent. Let's stop using phrases and words like this because they can be hurtful. They can incite things that may not be intended, from the person making those comments. Let's highlight that. Let's talk about that. So this way we can get away from this blowing out of proportion, becoming a racist thing. And then all of a sudden, it may not happen where I am, it may not happen where you are, but somewhere, someone hears that story and they have that in their mind. And now the next interaction that they have with someone who's white might not be a great thing because they're taking this emotion behind this event and how it's being reported, and then they're applying it to their day-to-day lives. And that happens way too much. That's how racism has grown so much, because there are so many people who don't know what it is to be black and have never encountered a person that is black, and they take all of their information from the media and they apply that in their lives. It's the I have the one black friend thing, but I'm not racist. So this, that is what we need to get away from, and we'll never grow as a society if we continue to try to take events like this and make them something that pits people against each other, when what it should be is an education to Ostapenko on how she should use her wording. What it should be is a little bit of an education to Taylor, like, hey, here are some of the things that might cause these kind of actions. How do you want to respond? And again, not saying that Taylor did anything wrong. I'm just saying there's an opportunity here.
It's an opportunity for everybody to learn. Absolutely.
Exactly. And that's how we need to approach these events, instead of taking these events and trying to pit yourself against someone and try to build a negative narrative out of this to support your hate, your desire to have conflict, whatever it is. Let's get away from that. That only leads to worse outcomes, not better outcomes.
Absolutely. Now, not to get away from tennis, but on a similar note, where we are talking about what's on your shirt, the Chiefs.
Just in case you didn't see that, there you go. And while I'm a Bears fan too, I was a Kansas City fan first. And I will always be a Kansas City fan. And look at how they look. I love the fact that they are now being being presented as underdogs. And can Kansas City reclaim the glory that they had?
Well, and that's the thing. You know what? I like being the underdog as the Chiefs. You know what? We're just going to sit there and we're going to continue to win like we always have for the last 5 years. I'm sorry to say. That's just how it works. I'm sorry, until you can beat the champ and dethrone it, you have nothing to say. So the only people that can talk to us is Eagles fans right now, because the Eagles fans are sitting on top.
They're the only ones that beat us, all right? And they're the champs, and they're defending their crown. And quite frankly, they look good enough to be able to repeat.
I have them as my favorite right now to probably repeat, given everything else going on in the league. The reason I was taking this conversation the way it was, because obviously you heard yesterday, Rashee Rice finally got the ruling. That he's going to be out
5 games, 6 games.
6 games. Now it makes interesting because it is a very tough stretch for the Chiefs to start the season. You got the Chargers in week 1 in Brazil. It's, John Harbaugh's got those boys kind of geared up, so it'll be interesting to see how he play. But I'm ready for Andy Reid and what we've got planned, so no problem there.
And love the vibe. Just to give a shout out, Harbaugh, you brought a new vibe to San Diego that hasn't been there, and I love your passion for the sport and the way you coach. I hope you do well. Just don't beat the Chiefs.
And I love that you called it San Diego because I'm still going to call it San Diego.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. I go there now with the LA Chargers. I'm sorry, old school. They are San Diego.
I'm sorry, but there is no such thing as the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm sorry, but there just isn't. You know what? It's still hard for me to say Las Vegas Raiders. I'm sorry, but to me, it's Oakland or it's LA. Take your pick.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry. I get it. It's changed. We talked about change. So, yes, they are the Las Vegas Raiders. They are the Los Angeles Chargers. But the reality is this. Where's their fan base located?
Exactly. See, that's what I get money rules the world. It's just like the Rams for me. I grew up living in St. Louis while the Rams were the Rams, while Kurt Warner was throwing up dimes. Torrey Holt was catching balls, Isaac Bruce, the whole gang. Hell, they made that one.
But what are they? They are the Los Angeles Rams because they were playing in the Coliseum way back in the day where they had Dreyer and Ferragamo and all of these different players.
Yeah.
Those were the Rams. And again, things changed. We're just being, a little tongue in cheek with this. But at the end of the day, your fan base to me dictates what you really are.
Absolutely. Now, getting back to the Chiefs, like I said, week 1, Chargers, week 2, Eagles. I don't like that matchup with the fact that we don't have a Rashee Rice. Week 3, I forget who we play. They want to say it's like the Giants, so I'm going to take that game and take it as a win. Week 4, the Ravens in Kansas City. That's going to be another tough matchup because Lamar and the boys are, let me tell you, I've been watching and hearing stuff here locally. Them boys ready. That's another team. If you ask me right now today who I'm picking for the Super Bowl, you're looking at a 995 showdown between the Eagles and Ravens. Because that running game for the Ravens is beastly. When you've got a third running back, this Ali cat, holy crap.
Well, here's what I'm going to say about that. As much as people and I don't take anything away from Lamar. Lamar is a great quarterback. I think what you said about the Eagles are the Eagles. That's right. And if you don't look at it, the champ is the champ until they're dethroned. And unless they did major changes that actually, took away from their team and their ability to win, and they did not. They actually improved in some areas. Let's talk about, we could talk about the Chiefs all day. Love my Chiefs there. I feel like they're going to win the AFC again. Yep. How is it that the Ravens aren't winning? They've got the best quarterback, a 2-time MVP. They've had opportunities in the playoffs, but they can't even make the Super Bowl and aren't even winning, some of the games to get to the conference championship.
One thing that the media always fails to highlight is this is now Lamar Jackson's, I believe it's fourth. Is it his fourth or fifth offensive coordinator since he's been in the league? The defensive side of the ball, because again, the Ravens have had great assistant coaches and they've gone on, to take on careers other places, other coordinator jobs, whatever it is.
Successful. Yeah.
And that's a testament to Harbaugh and what he's doing. But the fact of the matter is that creates no stability for the coaching assignment. And frankly, that's why they lost to the Chiefs, a couple years ago. They couldn't finish the game. They literally couldn't finish the game.
Agreed.
And same thing with the Bills. The Bills, honestly, I think it came down to their defense, and their defense isn't coached well.
I blame their defense because Josh has won a few games for them and left little time on the clock, and somehow the defense couldn't hold that lead.
The defense that screwed over the Bills from going to the Super Bowl. So that's screwing over the Bills. And frankly, the Bills, again, statistically, I believe them and the Ravens actually have the most odds in Vegas right now to get to the Super Bowl, believe it or not. They're at plus 700.
I think they're tied with the Chiefs. I think they were like a 10% for all three of those teams, the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens.
Correct. Now, so what gets interesting is the Bills have the softest schedule amongst the elite teams.
Yes, they do.
So, in theory, they should end up with a 1 seed, in theory, in the AFC, and will be hosting an AFC championship game, potentially in that cold, brutal weather. You got the Ravens, they got their ground game, and they can be just as good in the snow as anyone else. But Will their defense be called properly in order to win the game is the question. Same thing with the Bills. Will their kicker actually hit a 50-yard field goal to win the game? I'm sorry, but I put my money on Harrison
right.
Butker and
Wide
Chris Jones.
right. Don't
Harrison
go
Butker,
wide
Chris
right.
Jones are your antithesis to all of that. That's where the Chiefs come into play.
Well, one thing that you pointed out, you know, and again, we love football, and America loves football.
Yes.
It is the premier
It
sport.
is America's sport.
It is America's sport, not baseball. Stop that.
Nope.
But you said something, and we could talk about things, and we'll get into some other things with regards to specifics of games and teams.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something that I think has been a problem in the NFL and maybe even other sports, but more so in the NFL than any other sport. You get success, and this has happened to the Bears quarterbacks for decades. If you are an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator and you have success, the logical thing is you want to be promoted. So you want to become the head coach.
Absolutely.
I would think that franchises should somehow come up with a way to keep these coaches, because what ends up happening is twofold.
Yeah.
One, and you just mentioned it, Lamar has had to learn a new system every year. How successful are you going to be if you don't have consistency, continuity, stability in what you're doing? It happened to the Bears. It's happening all over. There are, and I'll present Matt Nagy as an example.
Yep.
Was a great offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, went on to become a head coach. When you're a head coach, the specificity that you had when you were an offensive or defensive coordinator leaves you, because now you're looking at the whole and you have to manage it all. So you can't be as focused on just the offense. You have an offensive coordinator. You could try to have conversations and put it, but you have a coordinator. And if you're a good, manager, coach, you want to make sure that they have some autonomy so they can do what they do, right?
Think about the two most recent dynasties, and the Chiefs are one of those two dynasties. You've had a stable coach, you've had a stable manager, you've had a stable set of players, and yes, you brought back Matt Nagy as a coordinator. You you've had Steve Spagnuolo there, and that's a stable defensive core. So it's been intact. The Patriots, the same thing. You had the Matt Patricias, you had the Josh McDaniels, you had the Romeo Crennels, and all those guys that were there. But all those guys that I just mentioned, they all went out to be head coaches that failed.
And failed miserably, not just failed.
Every single one. None of them have another job. None of them have an opportunity for a head coaching job because of the failure that they had as a head coach. Exactly. They are good in their mindset. They are good in their niche. Buddy Ryan. Think back to Buddy Ryan.
Buddy Ryan was a great defensive coordinator.
Defensive coach ever.
Great.
As a coach? No, not that great. And that's just how it is. Think back to the 49ers and George Seifert, that whole Bill Walsh, all that stuff. It stayed intact for, 5-6 years, and that's why they had the dynasty they had.
Yep.
You had Shanahan and the Broncos. These are dynastic things that have stayed together for 3, 4, 5 years. Yep. That's how you build the long-term success. Even Philly has managed to, I think, hold on to most of their pieces, although they did lose their offensive coordinator. So we'll see how they do. But, same thing.
And that's what happens. You're successful. And again, I get it. I want to be promoted. I want to do the next step, see if I can be successful in that type of responsibility. Totally get it. But I think more times than not, you have some of these trees. You mentioned the 49ers. Their tree was a great tree. There are some other trees that are great trees. Andy Reid's tree is a pretty decent tree. Bill Belichick's wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
If you look at every one of their coaches, they say like, okay, well, let's bring them back in the role that they were successful in. And Patricia is now coaching. Who's coaching the Patriots today?
Well, the coach is I'm losing track here. But Matt Patricia is the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Think about how far down.
Oh, okay. So he's now in college, and Bill Belichick is now in college as well. But again, I think that while I understand the why it happens, I do think that it's failing more times as being successful. And maybe when you have a good thing, maybe I can entice you as an offensive coordinator to say, hey, you know what? Maybe you want to become a head coach. Here, let's pay you something more similar to that. You can make more money, and you still keep the continuity. You think about it. Your family is in that state. Yep. You're uprooting your kids. You're doing this. I would do whatever it takes to try to keep them where they are for that 5 years and say, hey, after this 5 years, we get this dynastic run. You can go do your thing, but we've already established a culture and a winning culture here that we hopefully can continue when you leave.
No, and that's the thing. Like, that's where it's hard to bet against the Chiefs this year, because everything's still intact. The same players are there, the same dudes, same cats, same everything is there. And guess what? Until you beat it, you can't prove anything. And because of all these other teams, the Ravens, the Bills, they have too many moving parts. Lamar Jackson is on his sixth wide receiver core and his fourth, offensive coordinator.
And their wide receivers haven't been that great. And I think that's always a problem. You're not and I know salary cap and things like that influence this, but you got to put the right players around people to achieve your potential.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're going to get what they're getting in the Ravens. And one other thing I wanted to mention about why the Chiefs have been so good. When you play golf on a certain course constantly, let's say you have that water hole, right? This one hard hole, you could be playing your butt off, but this one hole seems to always get you. And I have one at specific golf course where this one hole isn't even much of a hole, but for some reason it's just in my head that I always seem to hit it in the water or pull it right, even if I clear the water and screw up that hole, just always. That's what the Chiefs have done to a lot of these teams.
Yep.
They've gotten into their minds to the point where they can't seem to get over the hump because they can't seem to defeat the Chiefs to get rid of that whole idea of, the mystique behind the Chiefs and being able to beat them.
You know what that water hole is for everybody? It's that dude with the fluff here. His name is Mahomes. They just you get that ball 20, you get that dude 20 seconds, you're fucked.
Well, if the Chiefs had a front line, they would not have lost the Super Bowl.
That's the thing. So this year,
the two Super Bowls they lost were both the same.
I think we had the steal of the draft, and we'll find out in the next few weeks if that's true. Josh Simmons is that dude. He is that dude on the anchor on our front line now that will protect the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mahomes. And that way his blind side is not getting killed every year. Now,
I hope so.
We still have the weak link. We still have the weak link, Taylor, who I don't like. Wish we'd get rid of him because that dude's going to jump the line every time and cause a 5-yard penalty.
Man, how many penalties can you get?
But I think the offensive line is going to be greatly intact. The running back core is solid. Hell, I don't know if you saw, but I think yesterday, as far as cut down date, obviously around the NFL, CEH got cut in New Orleans. So guess what? We want to bring back the whole band in the running back core. We already got Hunt. We got Pacheco.
Although I was a little upset at Hunt during one of the preseason games where he dropped his touchdown pass. Didn't like that at all. Didn't like that. I know we're running out of time. We got about 10, 13 minutes. One of the things I just wanted to talk about across the NFL is some of the things that we've seen. So, we're relating to talking about maintaining coaches, maintaining players. Most of the players, we saw Terry McLaurin got his money. Henderson didn't get his money, but he got something that pacified him where they gave him a 1-year contract. So he felt like he was getting paid what he should for that year. And we've had notable other signings that have happened. What hasn't happened, and as much as I hate it because Jerry Jones only cares about Jerry Jones and having people talk about him because that's just going to make his franchise more money. But oh my God, how could you not sign Micah yet? What's the deal? And I know it's emotional. This is another thing where I feel like the owner tried to circumvent the system, work with the player. Hey, if I'm with you and I'm a great player, you talk to me as an owner, we're all right. I'm going to tell you I want to stay there. I'm going to tell you, hey, you know what, if you pay me this money. But what the process is my agent has to approve that. You should be going through my agent, not trying to get me because I don't know the ins and outs and some of the technical aspects of contracts and how they work. So don't try to make a deal with me on the sideline and then get in front of the media and said it was my fault because I didn't sign that deal.
And here I thought we were going to get away with talking about the star.
They don't deserve it, to be honest. They've gotten more publicity than any other franchise this season and every season. And look at what they've done since the dynastic run that they had back with the Aikmans and Irvins. And
I'm going to be as blunt as I've always been. This is where the slave owner and the slave have the issue. I'm sorry to say, Jerry Jones, you are a slave owner.
He acts like that. He really does. And the words that he uses, yeah.
It's the words and tone and the way he carries himself in the media. It's like he owns these guys. That's what he makes it sound. I'm like, if you own someone, guess what that's called? It's called slavery. That's the definition. And again,
we're just giving our opinions about what we're seeing. But I think it's pretty obvious how Jerry Jones has conducted himself through the years. Hey, he needs Jimmy Johnson. Jerry Jones, your biggest problem was you got rid of Jimmy Johnson. Because he was somebody who would stand up to you, and you want people who won't stand up to you. Remember Bill Parcells? Bill Parcells left as well because he's another person that wouldn't tolerate the bullshit. Exactly. So he goes out and gets people who aren't the greatest coaches that can tolerate his shit, who will let him do what he does.
Exactly. He'll buy puppets. He'll buy people that have no spine to stand on. I mean, I'm sorry, but out of the entire candidate pool of coaches that was out there in the world, including Kellen Moore, who's a great offensive coordinator on your own team, you decided to go get Schottenheimer. I'm nothing against Schottenheimer, but I'm sorry, but he was probably the dead last pick out of the entire stable of coaches that were out there. And you took the guy that you could probably, quote unquote, control the most if you want. Call down a play if you need to.
Well, I think the thing here now, because of it's been going on for so long, is it's sort of like how the Bulls were. When you see that ownership is bad, nobody wants to come to you. So you're only going to get a limited pool.
Think about
the entire pool that would include the better candidates.
Said, hey, I'm going to go sign with the Cowboys. Not a damn person.
Nobody. One, they're not sure they're going to get paid because he's going to string you out. And two, quite frankly, when you're moving teams, you want to go to a team you think that can win. When was the last time you really felt, not what the media said, not what they pump them up to be, but when's the last time you really felt like the Cowboys could win a Super Bowl?
We know when it was, because everybody in social media said it. It's when VHS tapes were still being used. That's exactly when it was. I mean, it's when camcorders were still alive, like Sony camcorders were still alive. That's when the Cowboys were relevant. People need to get off the schneid of ever hoping that the Cowboys will ever be relevant until the DVD player is dead and the VHS player comes back to life.
And right. And that label of America's team, again, was back from that time. But they haven't been America's team for decades. And quite frankly, as much as I didn't like the New England Patriots, they were America's team for a while.
Red, white, and blue, and they won. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's as fact.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. I know next time we get together, we'll do something you are in our next podcast before the games start on Thursday next week, and we'll get a chance to get in depth about the games. But I do enjoy the conversation around some of the events, stupidity that we're seeing with the signings, with some of the rosters that we've seen. Another question: is Shedeur Sanders a third string quarterback?
Okay, so my take is very simple. He's still a rookie. He had one decent game as a preseason quarterback against not a first flight NFL squad. Is that enough to warrant him over a veteran who's won a Super Bowl, mind you, Joe Flacco? Yes, he is 40, but we are talking about the Cleveland Browns and how inept they've been in managing their entire roster and everything else.
So that was one of the points. Yep.
Did Shedeur get dinged for having gone to a shitty franchise? Yeah, probably. Would he be a second backup anywhere else in the NFL? And my answer to that, unfortunately, is no, because I think he still has to develop. I don't think he is as refined and polished as other quarterbacks that had seen more reps in college, because mind you, he's only had a 2-year sample size in college, if you think about it.
Well, he had 2 years at a major college.
At a major, yeah. And then again, I have nothing.
Jacksonville State. Jackson State or whatever. So
yeah, he's going to put up Madden numbers at Jacksonville State, which is fine. But a lot of players do that. But if you truly are an NFL quarterback, you should be able to perform against the best in college, and that's where he struggled a little bit at times. And yeah, he had a top flight guy with Travis Hunter and everything else. But that said, I think he's still got a year to develop. So people shouldn't be jumping the shine like, oh, he should be a starter. Well, he should only be a starter because his last name is Sanders. It's not because of his talent set.
I agree with that. I agree with the Sanders part. I actually agree with the Cleveland Browns decision, because if you watch Gabriel play, he seemed to have the timing down. And one thing that I saw Sanders do that also Caleb Williams does in Chicago is you can't be thinking every play has to be a spectacular play. Sometimes you just, hey, you know what, the rush is coming, throw the ball out of bounds. You get to play another down and you don't lose 10, 15 yards. Shedeur is running backwards like 20 yards and losing these things because he's always trying to be spectacular. And sometimes you don't need to do that. And that's, again, I think that's that background kind of thought that you got to lose when you're in the pros. Because in the pros, they're not like the college players where, you're in a major college, you are playing against better players. But in the pros, every single person is the best player in their position that came out of college. The best player, the fastest player. They're faster than you. Yeah. So you have to learn how to adjust to that, get your timing to understand the speed. And he hasn't gotten to that point yet.
I'm going to try to draw a quick analogy, and hopefully everybody appreciates this on Saturday when it comes out. So, the big hype is on Arch Manning this year. Obviously, the pedigree and everything else and all that. You're starting with arguably the toughest game of the year, playing at Ohio State in the Horseshoe as invariably your first starting game in college. If you think about it, even though he played a couple of games last year, this is really the moment to shine when you're the number one team in the country. You're playing against the best defense, all that stuff.
Agreed.
I'm sorry, but the hype is there. The guy hasn't proven it yet. But I will say this much. I want you to take a very close look at how Arch Manning carries himself during a game versus what Shedeur Sanders was. To your point, Shedeur is always looking for that home run ball. And I think that's a product of, hey, I had Travis Hunter out there. He could catch anything. Doesn't matter.
You're right.
Arch Manning go through his progressions. He's a lot more patient with the ball. And that's where I give him credit in his development pattern versus a Shedeur. And I think you're going to get that comparison in the NFL once both of them are there, where they're going to be kind of compared against each other down the road. I'm not saying Shedeur is going to be as great as Arch or vice versa, but I think that both those guys are going to have to carry themselves where they're always going to be compared to one another because they're sons of greats, or Arch is kind of a relative of great. Let me put it that way.
Well, and there may have been some degree just because he fell to a fifth draft. I don't think he was a fifth, sixth round draft pick. I don't think that was fair to him.
Definitely not.
I think that might have been to lessen the hype that he was coming in with. The money man. Look, your father could do that because he was the best cornerback of his era and maybe of all time. That was your father. Yeah, yes. But that wasn't you. You know, you have to establish yourself to start talking all that smack and being, you know, the guy with the dollar sign and money.
Look at Shiloh. Bad behavior.
Yeah. Didn't he just get cut, or didn't make, what was he with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
He got cut obviously for performance, but at the same time, look at how he carried himself on the field. Classless. You know,
and that's where classless is appropriate. You got to show class. One of the things that I loved about Walter Payton and Barry Sanders, and don't get me wrong, I think the NFL at times, I think at times the NFL has become the no fun league, and you need to expect, you know, these hyped up guys going through it, emotional. When you score a touchdown, you should be able to celebrate. But one of the things that I loved about Barry Sanders and Walter Payton is that they acted like they've been there so many times. This wasn't a big deal. Yep. And they were the greatest at their position, these two guys.
Absolutely.
So
nobody can stop you from saying that. Absolutely.
You know, establish yourself as a pro, be professional, and then you can get all of that hype and glory and, you know, do that stuff. But just coming in, stop it. You know, we aren't on the playground. Everybody on the field is just as good as you are. So stop it.
100% agree. 100% agree. They'll have
I have a quick question. So you brought up Lamar and some of the things that he's had to deal with and why that might have not promoted the success or him reaching his potential of the Ravens making it to the Super Bowl. Yep. Caleb Williams was the #1 draft pick last year. And he's in a similar situation. Yeah. Well, yeah, I do agree he was overhyped, and I think that's evident by the fact that every other quarterback that was drafted in last year after him has actually performed better than he has.
Yes.
I do think that Caleb has been shafted because he came to the Bears, and the quarterback, being the quarterback there, you have to follow what's going on with, what was his name? I can't remember his name, and I'm a Bears fan. That's how bad he was. The guy who was defensive coordinator from the Indianapolis Colts who became the coach.
Oh, no, it's not. What's not? Sorry. I know who you're talking about. I can't remember the name now.
Can't bring his name up. That's the problem.
How bad it is.
Yeah, you know, he did a horrible job. Eberflus, that was his name.
Eberflus.
So he was so poor at his job, and again, a defensive coordinator coming in, trying to be coach, trying to, you know, have an offense. They just suck, and the Bears have had that continuously for years. Is Caleb Williams as good as he was initially advertised, and is he getting a bad rap because of the people who coach him, or was he overhyped and he really wasn't as good as Jalen Daniels? Because I remember there were people who said Jalen Daniels should have been #1 pick.
I think there is something that always gets lost when kids come out of college and to see what their background is. Jalen Daniels came from LSU. LSU, always known to be a place where you have workhorses, kids that came from not exactly the greatest backgrounds and stuff that are willing to bust their ass to become the best they are. Caleb Williams came from USC. What have we seen? Nothing but from USC. Spoiled brats that are rich kids coming from the highest. What's I'm saying? Name me a guy from the USC that has lasted more than 4 years in the NFL. The last one was Carson Palmer, and that's 2 decades ago now.
Well, actually, no. Wasn't Sanchez from USC?
But Dirty Sanchez only made it for like 2 years as an NFL starter.
Well, he actually made it to the AFC Championship 1 year. And I
Okay,
think
I'm
it
sorry, that was even. That was Revis Island. All right, let's face facts. and that was, fuzzy feet. I like feet. Rex Ryan, whatever his name is, the defensive, coach.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Actually, yeah. It was we were talking about Buddy. That was his son.
Yeah, exactly. But USC, look at that class that came out in 2003. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush. They had a receiver on there like Mike Williams. All busts. Even Reggie Bush is technically a bust if you think about it, with as much hype as he had.
I agree.
Carson Palmer was a quarterback before Matt Leinart.
Yeah, Keyshawn is honestly the most notable player that I can think of from USC that really made a mark in the NFL. Maybe wrong, maybe overlooking some people, but let's talk specifically about the quarterbacks. To me, USC and Ohio State have been in that same bucket. What's that? Yeah, but if you think about it, those two colleges, they've had quarterbacks who have shined in play and were, touted as the next best thing coming out. And not one of those quarterbacks, you can look back through the decades. How many quarterbacks have been good from USC?
Zero.
Well, we're going to go back to like Art Schlichter? Are we going to do that?
We're going to go way back. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like the entire time that, USC became quote unquote like the U of the West, if at one point, because of all the hype, and it's like, hey, we're in LA, we're the rich school, all that stuff. They suck.
And you said Carson Palmer. When was how long ago did he play?
It was before Matt Leinart. It was 2000.
So that was the last time they actually had a quarterback that was really good in the NFL.
Why does that year stick in my head? Because in 2003, when Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Mike, like they had like 7 NFL guys in the first round, and that guess who took them down? Vince Young.
Vince Young, remember that?
Yeah, the greatest college quarterback in my time.
Exactly. What he did in Texas, great. Went to the pros. What was he at? The Tennessee Titans or one of those teams?
Because he ate his way through Cheesesteak Factory every day.
Yeah, and he was horrible. He was horrible. So they just have, I think that sometimes you have these quarterbacks coming out of college from these major colleges, and they are just so hyped up. Teams get them, and then they just totally suck. Give me a guy from Montana State that can throw the ball. Give me one of those,
Josh Allen, Wyoming. Lamar Jackson, Louisville. Jaden Daniels, LSU. I mean, take your pick. Joe Burrow, LSU. I mean, guys that had to work their way into the system.
Yeah, I want somebody who has that kind of mentality, not somebody who is like the, given the role at a major college, especially USC. Are you really committed?
Call it my personal bias in this, because obviously I'm a Jayhawk fan. Look out for a kid named Jalen Daniels coming out of Kansas this year.
See what he does. You had a good quarterback in Kansas who was a pretty stout kind of guy, bigger than most for a quarterback, lefty. Didn't you have a quarterback not too long ago?
Trying to remember now. Well, he took us to the promised land. He won us an Orange Bowl.
But again, it's just,
yeah.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, we were talking about these quarterbacks and their success and everything else. I think people forget, and even some of these athletes forget, the best of the best of the best are the ones that are playing the pros. You can be in a good college, especially a major college. You got the biggest linemen. You got the fastest receivers. Yep. You're going to look great, especially when you're playing competition like Appalachian State. Maybe not Appalachian State for Michigan, because didn't they beat Michigan? But you know what I'm saying? You look better because you're playing against lesser competition. Now you're going to the next level where everybody's the biggest guy. Everybody's fast.
I'll end on this note. In order to succeed at the pro levels and even at the college level, you need to be hungry. I don't care about all the media hype. I don't care about how much talent you walk in with unless you know how to use it and honestly prove it, have a chip on your shoulder, and want to be the best. Those are the guys that you respect, and those are the guys that had the most success. Simple as that.
I agree. And those are the ones I want on my team. You got to want it, and you got to be hungry. You shouldn't feel like you're, just walking in. Yeah, and this is you're just given to you, and you're going to walk in, and you're going to be the best player, and you talk like that. That's not what I want on my team. I want somebody who's hungry every day, trying to prove themselves, and looks at the person across from them as the enemy and wants to beat them every time they play.
Exactly. That's what makes the greatest players in the NFL. There's no question.
Yep. When we get back together and our next show, we're going to actually break down some of the games that are coming up, give you our picks for each one of those games, and also talk about the events that have occurred from this moment to there. And it won't just be football. If there are things going on, we still got the U.S. Open out there, but I think we're going to focus on football because that's our main bread and butter. But we will also talk about other sporting events, and God forbid, I'm hopeful that nothing else happens.
Exactly. Nothing negative in the world. That's all I can
Yeah,
say.
that is so negative and that impacts so many in a negative way. People, please, if you need help, go find help. If you're
Yes.
having issues with who you are and the world around you, talk about it with somebody. Maybe it'll help give you a different perspective to where you don't lash out and act in a manner that we've seen with some of these people that take the life of others that have nothing to do with the issues that you're dealing with. And
agree.
let's open our arms and try to embrace each other instead of push each other away. Let's stop trying to come up with reasons to cause conflict and come up with solutions due to the opportunities that we have that'll help us bring the world together and make us a better society, a better nation, a better world. Let's do that.
Absolutely. Now, on that note, I'm going to notably say thank you, Carlos Alcaraz, for embracing my and my colleague's hairstyle.
Go ahead.
Your brother is not a great barber, and he screwed up your haircut. You said you should.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. and as he put it, he used a machine. I'm sorry, but it just makes me think that he stuck his head to the machine and went.
No, but on that note, yeah, we'll bring up U.S. Open. We'll go with football week 1, and we'll get to see some of the college results from this weekend too. But in the meantime, happy Labor Day to all. Hopefully you enjoy the time. Yes. And like we said, we want peace in the world, not chaos.
That's it. And enjoy your time with those that you love this weekend. Barbecue a little bit if you can, or grill, and enjoy. And again, it's about how do you make the world around you better, not how you take away from it.
Absolutely. On that note, see you next week.
You got it.
Make our
Peace out, bro.
You guys.
All right. Enjoy.